Welcome back to Beyond the Uniform. I'm Justin Asiri, and each week I meet with military veterans to learn about their civilian career, what they do, how they got there, and advice for other veterans seeking to do the same. Today's episode number 177 with Stephanie Vaughan.
And crypto is like the Wild West, and it's every country all the time. Like nobody takes weekends off, nobody takes nights off. Like it's insane. And it's awesome because you get to meet with people from all around the world at all times a day. But yeah.
Well, when I sent out my newsletter to the Beyond the Uniform audience, one of the most requested types of interviews was with people in blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, you name it, anything related to this whole new field. And I have to be with you on that one. I'm very fascinated by this. It is, as you will learn in this interview, the Wild West. It's pretty crazy, but it took me a while, but was able to track down Stephanie Vaughan, who is in the blockchain space. In the capacity, as you learn, there's lots of different ways to do that. She's more in kind of the service provider support area of helping companies that are in this space. And I have to have a lot of empathy for her because I feel like her and my friends who are in this space, it takes a lot to explain what they're doing to me. And I've been out for 10 years, went to business school at Stanford, I've been working in the business world, and it's still hard for me to get my head around. And so to try to explain that to an active duty audience who may not have any business experience, it's just an order of magnitude more difficult. So I just want to really appreciate Stephanie for the extent to which she was able to really break this down in a way that I found accessible, and I think that many listeners will as well. Even if you're not interested in crypto or blockchain, I think this is a great interview to listen to because Stephanie talks, especially at the end, about taking risks, about going down a path that not a lot of people have gone down. And she also talks about something that comes up quite a lot, this whole piece of being able to advocate for yourself and the difficulty she felt and the roadblocks that she felt when she was selling herself in interviews and things like that. And I relate, and I would say at least half, if not 2/3 of everyone I interview says the same thing. And I think she's got some great advice there as well. Stephanie mentions a couple resources. All of them will be in the show notes for this episode at beyondtheuniform.io, so you can not have to worry about that if you're driving or running or, jumping out of a plane right now. One quick plug, if you are enjoying Beyond the Uniform, there's 3 things that would mean the world to me if you do any one of these 3. The first is there is a donate button on the site at beyondtheuniform.io. All of this is done. It does cost money. That comes from my pocket, and so it'd be great to offset that cost. Second, I'm lining up sponsors to support the show with advertisements. If you know of anyone who wants to either hire or get in front of an active duty and recently transitioned military audience thinking about their next career, let me know, send me a note, and I will send them more information. And then lastly, if neither of those apply, if you could just share this with your friends, post it to Facebook, social networks, or wherever your military friends are getting their information, would love to get more exposure. So with that, let's dive into my conversation with Stephanie. Well, joining me today in New York City is Stephanie Vaughan. Stephanie, thank you for joining me and welcome to Beyond the Uniform.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And so for listeners, I wanted to give an abbreviated background for Stephanie. She is the Vice President and Head of Capital Markets at X Ventures, which is a premier boutique crypto agency advisory firm. X Ventures supports leading blockchain companies worldwide, serving as a strategic and financial advisory for token-generating events. She started out at the Naval Academy, after which she served as a Marine Corps officer for over 5 years. After her military service, she earned her MBA at Columbia Business School, worked as an investment banking associate at Houlihan Lokey, a venture capitalist at LunaCap Ventures, and as director of capital markets at StreetShares. She is also a contributing writer at the Blockchain Times. So Stephanie, maybe first off, apart from a blatant mispronunciation, anything you want to correct or amend from your background there?
No, I mean, that sounds right. It's Houlihan Lokey. I don't know. Some people know it as it's a very it's a boutique investment bank in New York. It also is kind of a very old name.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me just actually start off because you're so gracious with your time. It is almost 10:30 at night in New York right now. And is this a typical day for you? Is this because you just came from another meeting, and so is this representative for you?
I think this is obviously a little bit later than normal, but I'd say in New York, there are meetings. I mean, when I was an investment banker, I worked till like 10 or 11 at a minimum each night.
Wow.
And then came home. But like, as far as phone calls, normally I wouldn't take them. But in New York, I feel like you often like have meetings from, or dinners or drinks or meeting with clients, 8 to 10 or 8 to 11. Yeah.
Well, let's start with the basics. So, let's start with where you work. So if you were talking to someone who's still on active duty, how would you explain to them the gist of what BlockX Ventures is doing?
So I'd say BlockX Ventures helps companies that would like to raise money in a token sale and have a good blockchain technology use case. So we find clients that I guess I'd say something along the lines of, I mean, it's hard for everybody to understand the different levels of fundraising, but you raise in startups, you raise Series A or seed and then Series A and Series B. And I'd say we look for companies that are probably at the Series A to Series B point, and they're looking to raise that next level of funding. So 15 to 30 million on the higher end, maybe 40 or 50 million. And they believe the best way to do this is through a token sale. And that is the best way to do it because it's a good use of blockchain technology. Hopefully that's simple.
Yeah, I'm just realizing as you say this is such a different interview for me because I usually know a little bit about the field and all of my friends.
It's equivalent to investment banking, maybe.
Yep. No,
you could think of it like that.
What is it like? I have a few friends who have gone off into this world of blockchain and crypto, and my sense as an outsider is this is the hot industry right now, and this is kind of the darling cutting edge technology. Cutting edge technology. What is it like right now to be at the epicenter of what is just an seemingly exploding industry?
What is it like to be? I mean, it's insane. Like, and it's also more insane because I feel like when I worked investment banking before, I mean, we sometimes have, or I had international clients, but I was sort of controlled a little bit. They knew like we were in New York, and most of the people we sold to were in America. And crypto is like the Wild West, and it's every country all the time. Like, nobody takes weekends off. Nobody takes nights off. Like it's insane. It's awesome because you get to meet with people from all around the world at all times a day. But yeah.
How would you explain your role? So you're the vice president and head of capital markets. Set the stage. Like, how many employees are there, and then what sort of work do you do?
We're a really small group, so we have like 8 people. Mm-hmm. George, who I work with, George Popescu, he has another company called LampX, which raised an ICO as well, the PIX token. And George also has Blockchain Times, which I help write for, even though Alan manages it, and Lending Times. So, I mean, it's a small team. And then what I like, because I'm head of capital markets, so other parts of the team focus on bringing the clients in, and then writing their white papers, helping them get their presentation ready. And I'm sort of like involved in that, but it's not my primary job. My primary job is helping the companies sell to all investors, and then helping them get their marketing set up in order to do their public sale.
And what does that translate to on a day-to-day basis? Like I know probably every day has a lot of variety, but could you just walk us through a hypothetical day of time-stamped and what sort of activities you're doing?
Sure. So I guess I could look at today. I mean, today's a little bit unusual because we have Blockchain Week coming up next week in New York. So a lot of investors sort of worldwide are flying into New York City. And so we're throwing events during that week, and we're actually doing a veteran event for veterans in blockchain, or any veterans that really just want to learn about blockchain, on Sunday night. And then, but anyway, sorry. So I spend about a couple hours this morning actually just doing like manual work to sort of finalize the venues that we have. And then I'm doing some of these events with a couple other VCs. One is Vaughanis Ventures. Another VC is State. And then, so I was just working with those VCs this morning, and then we are finalizing like who our attendees are, and then what companies are going to be there in order to just like have like the best sort of blockchain event. So that's like, event planning is typically not what I do, but I feel like it is part of every investment banker's job on some level, because you do have to have, dinners or events, and they do need to run right in order for, investors to meet founders in the best way. And then I'd say so that's what I spent a couple hours doing. And then I spoke to 2 new potential clients. And then I kind of screened them to see if their ideas make sense for their blockchain technologies, and if, really testing the person to see if like this was going to be the right person to maybe use this technology, and then try to see if they were going to make it to kind of the next level in our funnel. So I did 2 of those calls. They were both half an hour. And then I speak to our clients. We have 4 main clients right now, and I'm sort of primarily more focused on 3. One is a little bit earlier stage. So I'm focused on the 3 that are about to go to market, or do their public sale rather. And they're all coming to New York as well. So I spoke to all of them to make sure that they're getting connected to the right investors, like that they're getting their meeting set up, and that they're like, for instance, like one had a legal question about just like his paperwork for what he has to have investors sign. So I answered that. Another one, he's sort of figuring out like what sort of token sale he wants to do. And there's a few different types. So he's considering a Dutch auction for his token sale. So we're kind of going through the benefits of doing a Dutch auction versus like selling it like in a typical sale with discounts. And then how we thought like his sale would sell. Mm. So just sort of answering those questions, dealing with those clients, managing like upcoming meetings, and yeah. And then I went to actually meditation class, and then I had another call with a group of people who are, looking to raise money and trying to put another blockchain technology together, and then got on this call.
I imagine the meditation is a necessary grounding, given just how insane it sounds like right now.
Yeah, I was considering. I was like, oh, I didn't think I had time to go, but it was necessary.
So when I had polled the Beyond the Uniform audience, crypto came up pretty high. There were many, many requests for people wanting to learn more about careers in blockchain and crypto. And, to be honest, my immediate response was like, wow, that's like so extreme for someone to think of going directly from the military into this environment. And I'm curious if you have thoughts one way or the other on, like, if you were talking to someone who was thinking of going directly from active duty to something in this space, what advice would you have for them?
I would say, well, I guess I didn't go directly into this space, and I had like a little bit more finance background, but I'd say a couple things. Like, one, it really is like the Wild West, which I didn't really know what that meant, but it means that basically nobody operates as if there's any rules. So you kind of just have to go as fast as you can. And then make sure you're staying within like a regulation within a certain country. So for instance, like a lot of the ICOs, like FinCEN came out with a letter, and basically because it's a transfer of money when an American buys a token, you have to be able to monitor the KYC, or the know your customer, through the life of the token. So in this example, like it basically makes it's not an example. I guess it basically makes it impossible for a U.S. investor to invest in a token sale that's not located in the U.S. and will be traded on an exchange that isn't approved by the SEC. And there's no exchange that's approved by the SEC right now. So unless the token's just not going to be traded and it's a U.S. investor, all U.S. investors are locked out of the market. So people in Silicon Valley are going to set up funds in the Cayman Islands as a sort of workaround in order to invest in ICOs. And they basically had to like react overnight and do that in order to like keep like investing in the space.
Wow.
So that's like maybe seems an extreme example to somebody who's in the military and like is used to following the rules. And you have to kind of be okay with that sort of change and that sort of like ability to like react to different regulations. Yeah,
it's I'm having a moment of empathy because I'm understanding like that. I think that, you know, when I talk to my friends about this industry, it is so new, and so having to explain that is an onerous task. But then I can hear the wheels turning as you're trying to explain this to a military audience, which is, you know, it's like a separate language. You're translating into terms that anyone can understand. It's not that's not an easy task. I just want to kind of recognize how, more so than any other interview I've done, you have a very difficult job of translating this wildly emerging industry into terms accessible from people who may not have any business experience.
Yeah, it's very sort of, I guess for regular business, I'm saying it's extreme, and so I feel like somebody who's in the military, they might see it as very extreme, but at the same time, like the best part about being an officer or enlisted is being able to take like sort of chaos and then put order to it.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable with that and you sort of like that chaos and then try to put some order to it, it's just like, I think the hardest part, I think someone from coming directly from the military will have, like, to going into this is, and maybe this has changed like in the last 5 years since I've been out, or almost 6 years, but the amount of tolerance you have to have for just different cultures and different rules, and then your personal risk tolerance because breaking a regulation isn't the same as breaking the law, you know?
Yep.
And you can take different risks with that. And I think you have to find, like, figure out, like, for instance, can you set up in Singapore and you're following these regulations in Singapore, and then you have to get a bank account, and there's different, like, banks accept certain things, there's certain laws, like, and they don't always match up, and you have to take certain risks.
Yeah, it's it is interesting because on the one hand, it seems like a dramatic change from active duty to that environment. On the other hand, part of what I'm hearing is that, like, in many senses, when someone leaves the military, they're in most industries, they're behind their peer set. But this seems to be like an industry where if it is the Wild West and the rules are being invented on the fly, it might be leveling the playing field. It might be an environment in which someone who comes from military background, who may be more comfortable with ambiguity, could have a relative advantage. That's one way of looking at it. But I can also see that, at least stereotypically, people in the military follow rules. They're very, disciplined and organized. And if it's an environment where those rules aren't that well defined and you're often following rules of different countries or bending and kind of finding loopholes, that might be difficult for many people in military to swallow.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I also think it's not even just people in the military that, struggle with those two things, but I look at my friends in DC versus like my friends in New York versus my friends in Silicon Valley, and
Yep.
like each of those groups like treats it very differently. Like there's different risk tolerances in all those cities, for how much regulatory risk like they're willing to take. I mean, Silicon Valley, they're the ones that are setting up their crypto funds now in the Caymans, They did it overnight.
Wow.
Didn't even think about it. But New York thinks about it and figures out the best place and where to save the most money and what's the most efficient. And then, DC thinks it's criminal. So
one thing, not to jump around too much, but right before we started the